In China at the moment, things are getting rather exciting because on January the 29th, it's going to be the Chinese New Year. In China, they call this the Spring Festival. It's like saying goodbye to winter and hello to spring. The days are going to get longer, there's going to be more sunshine, etc., etc. But what I would like to do today is to sort of, can I say, criticize without any fancy graphics. It's just me talking basically over this, that there are some people that complain that the American government spend 1.6 billion people on anti-CPC or CCP. It doesn't matter which one you call it. They've both been used in Chinese media with this for anti-China. But here's the thing. In China, they spend 2.9 billion American dollars, or the equivalent of that. $1 is about 7.6 RMB, the Chinese currency there. And these come from people who would say there's poverty alleviation, there's no absolute poverty in China, where time and time again, YouTubers and people on Twitter would show videos of the poor in China, the same as, you could say, Kensington Avenue in New York City. There would be a guy, an English guy, for example, who went to England and he criticized the underground in the UK, choosing possibly the worst underground station in London and saying, oh God, where is the train? But the train system in London is really effective. I think there would be a train, especially in the rush hour, one every 45 seconds, the same as Hong Kong, the same as Singapore. But in Shanghai, the same as I could say in Bangkok, even in the rush hour, there'd be a train every 3 minutes. So you get the overcrowding situation. These are the people who would show all the positive things in China, and there are many, and they would say if they went on the street and asked are they happy with their government, they would say that 100% of people would be happy with it, which is near enough, you could say, impossible. Am I happy with the UK government? Not really. It doesn't really concern me. Am I happy with the American government? Well, I hope things do change for the better with Donald Trump, now president of the United States of America. Xi Jinping has declared himself like lifetime president, the same as Mao. And Mao is the guy who actually killed millions of people during the Great Leap Forward. Some people would call it the Great Leap Backwards, and also the Cultural Revolution. And in Chinese education, they will never show the bad things like the incident on June the 6th, 1989 in Beijing in a square called Tiananmen. It's not shown. You ask young people about that, they won't know anything about it. Some of the old will. And it was, some people would even deny it actually happened, saying it just didn't happen, where lots of TV crews from around the world, like CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, well, they weren't around at the time, let's say Fox and ABC, for example, were there showing live footage of what was happening in Beijing. So they deny it. They sort of like sweep under the carpet the things which don't really happen. There's another guy on YouTube saying that these incidents that have happened in China over the last year of 2024 is small compared to the incidents which happen in America or in the UK. But it's them digging their own grave, so to speak. In other words, they claim that China is the safest country in the world, where obviously it isn't. It's Iceland and Norway and places like Switzerland, which are. and even Switzerland have, most people would have a gun license, not to carry a gun, but they would have guns at home. But that's a different story with that. So they claim it's the safest. So when these incidents happen, and when someone runs over 35 people in a sports stadium, or when someone drives into children at a school, he's downplaying that. But America doesn't claim to be the safest country in the world, but China does. So when these incidents do happen, of course it brings headlines, because it's against your propaganda that you're saying it's the safest, when you could say Shanghai has the same problems as any other city in the world, like Bangkok or Tokyo or even London, for example. And it's sort of like, yeah, it does. I'm going to use some bad words. It does sort of like piss me off when you see this from someone who just does a video like this with no evidence. Well, I can go on Twitter and get the evidence from Chinese people who have broken over the Chinese firewall to show the West what's happening in the East, in China, for example. YouTube is not allowed in China. A VPN is a virtual private network, is illegal in China. But the police don't really care about it as long as you do the pro-CCP or CPC or whatever you like to call it propaganda. They won't worry about it. But if I was in China, for example, and I was using a VPN and doing this video, I would possibly get a knock on the door and asked for these videos to be deleted. It's all food for thought, and it's it's two sides of the argument, but you feel like these people, these Westerners who live in China, they know what's going on, and whether they are paid or not, we will never know. And maybe they do it for clicks. Maybe they live in a fantasy world in their nice Western apartment, which they can afford because they've lived in the West for a long time and they've got their pension. They can afford this apartment. It's a lot cheaper than living in the UK, for example. You could say the same exactly the reason, or how I live in Southeast Asia, because of the cost of living is remarkably cheap. I remember going to the UK and going to a supermarket restaurant, and the can of Coca-Cola cost me £2.50, which is like $3.50 for a can of Coke in the supermarket, in the canteen restaurant there. China is considerably cheaper. Here in Southeast Asia, even cheaper than China. So I don't know why people would actually want to retire in a communist state. Maybe they're happy with the communist way. It doesn't matter the color of your skin if you believe in it. Many people did in Russia before. Many people in China still do, with over 100 million CCP or CPC card-carrying members. So this is my little easy to make video, just complaining about the propaganda that it's not all a bed of roses in China. Great to visit, yeah, sure. You're not going to have, hopefully, any problems with it. The Chinese people are very friendly, very warm, very welcoming, and you will possibly have a fantastic time there. But do be aware of the background of it. Don't talk about Chairman Mao when you're in China. Don't talk about President Xi Jinping when you're in China. Don't criticize the government when you're in the Chinese government in China. But do, by all means, criticize the US government or the English government or the French government when you're in China. That's fine, but you can't criticize their government when you're there. You may get a knock on the door. God bless to all. Thank you very much for your time. I feel better now. My rant and rave is over.